Thank you, Mark. Mark is a very good friend of mine, and he's great at sending 30,000 of his closest friends my way for a very short period of time on Marathon Monday. So I thank you for that. So, exactly. So, who here is expecting a course assignment on Marathon Monday? Okay. So I'll be your segment coordinator. I'm Jim, KB1KQW, introduced earlier. I'm going to go through briefly some of the areas of responsibility that we cover on the course, and there's really two main positions. You're either going to be at a medical tent or at a hydration station. So if you've done a medical tent in the past, there are no major changes that are expected in 2017. There's still going to be 2 operators assigned to each medical tent. The strong recommendation is one operator is going to work very closely with the station leader, and the other operator is going to work very closely with the person that's responsible for records and reporting. That's where the hourly stats are going to come in again. Amateur rate, as we've talked about before, is not part of the walking teams, and the EMS requests are still handled via the EMT communicators at the station. We are going to continue to report the medical resupply requests, as you've heard, and again, we're a secondary path. If something were to happen, if the primary mode of communication were to fail, we are that secondary backup path. The hourly stats, it's all our favorite thing to do. I appreciate everybody's help and support on this. Last year it worked awesome. We were very good about getting the data in. The Department of Public Health does rely on this data on a timely basis, and I kid you not, and some of the people that have been at CourseNet have seen this before, if the data is not in at the top of the hour, at 1 minute past, they're in the chat room. Where's the data? It's, you know, they do rely on it. I'm going to show you what we do with the data in a moment. So about 10 minutes before the top of the hour, whoever is working with that records and reporting person should go over and ask what's the hourly update. We're looking for 3 pieces of information: the number of runners treated, the number of runners in the tent, and the number of runners that have been transported to area hospitals. They are due no later than 5 past. Last year we were great at getting them in at 10 of, and they were right in the system, right on time. And the number treated and transported are both cumulative numbers. They're not hourly, they're cumulative. And the number of runners that are currently in the tent is a current statistic. So 2 cumulative and 1 current stat. You may see other people in the medical tent gathering similar information. That's happened the last couple of years. They are working to streamline it a little bit, but don't be surprised if your records and reporting person says, hey, I already gave that information 5 minutes ago. We are collecting it as well, even if somebody else has gathered that information. I'll get some questions a little later. You may not have seen this before. This is what we do with all the data. It's a nice, pretty colored spreadsheet. And at the top of every hour, we go ahead and load this in. And usually we see up in the upper right corner, there's about 15 other people that are logged in kind of watching this happen. So if you worked a medical tent last year, you'd see your data right up there. That's what we do with it. So we had 1,362 runners seen last year. If you are at a hydration station, again, we're not expecting any major changes. Again, 2 amateur radio operators at the hydration station. Sometimes due to staffing, some stations may only have 1 hydration ham radio operator. That's going to depend on what we have on race day. There's also 1 station further towards Brookline that only is on one side of the road, so there's only 1 ham radio operator at that station. No resupply focus. Medical requests are still handled. Commercial radio back to medical tents, but medical station staff would be located on the right side of the road. That's still on the plan for this year. Continue to report issues that interfere with station operation. Always continue to report emergency situations. And remember, amateur radio is still that backup secondary path for hydration to medical tent ambulance requests should that become necessary over the course of Marathon Monday. Hydration stations, we also started refining hourly statistics last year. We're going to continue to do that this year. A little bit more in terms of stats reporting, but it's all good information. What time are you on station? What time did your team arrive? There's going to be a big discrepancy between those 2 numbers, especially if you're closer to Boston. Has to do with the time we have to get all of our volunteers out on the course. You might get there 30, 40 minutes before the rest of the hydration team. Just check in, let us know you're there, and then let us know when your team has arrived. Starting number of water jugs. You'll see in the next slide, there's a lot of them to count, but somebody should have that information. You shouldn't have to go count. Usually it's 384 water jugs. That's a long counting process. You should be able to get that information. Closing number of water jugs, what time did the station close, and there may be some other statistics that need to be gathered depending on the needs of the hydration program. So if you reported last year, this is what we did with that information. Another spreadsheet, another bunch of people logged in looking at it. Rough station time, and you could see some of these discrepancies down here, especially closer to Boston. Somebody checked in at 7:30 and the team showed up at 9 o'clock. That's not uncommon, okay, just as a brief heads up. So that's my overview on course communications. Again, we're going to have a question and answer period following all the segments. Happy to answer any and all questions you guys have, including after the presentations. You can find me afterwards. So the easiest way to get from Hopkinton down the course would be to go to the finish line, but not every time does that work out. So we have the medical sweep transportation program that Harrison's going to talk about.